Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Today is the 11th of the month of September, the date the 9th, and of course we can't fail to have noticed through the news and all the programmes that it is actually the 20th anniversary of the bombing of the Twin Towers in New York. It's dubbed 9/11 for short, isn't it? Now, with something catastrophic, for example, President Kennedy being shot, we tend to remember initially, when we recall the event, where we were at the time when we heard the news. We remember where we were at the time. Rather importantly, we knew where we were located in space. It's very significant and interesting too. Our physical location in space is fundamental to taking in and responding to the here and now, and that's harking back to Reverend Master Saido's talk yesterday when we were talking about mindfulness and being where you are, neither bound by the past or heading into the future, whilst they are still always there having an impact on us. Think formal meditation. First thing is to locate oneself physically. Eyes, ears, nose, tongue, nose opposite navel, sitting bones. And it doesn't hurt when in daily life to reconnect with where one is right now and notice if one's caught in the past overly or is well ahead of oneself into planning and getting into the future. Being located where you are is both a safety tip and a tip for responding to the next thing in a coordinated and conscious way. I was, when 9/11 happened, in Cornwall, living in a mobile home, and that day I decided to clean out the gutters of the mobile home. So I was up a ladder, not a very tall one, and I'd set to, and then I felt extremely faint and rather unsafe and vulnerable, and I remember thinking, I don't think I should be up this ladder right now. So I got down carefully, got into the trailer, sat in my comfortable chair, which I have to say Irene rescued from a skip in Reading. Always grateful for that, Irene. I sat down in the chair and put a blanket over myself because I kind of realised I must be in shock. And so I settled, and then Julie Taylor-Brown came past, saw me sitting in my chair and knocked on the window and asked if I knew what had just happened. And then, of course, I did know what had happened, and she invited me in to watch the whole thing on television. So it takes a catastrophic event of a global impacts such as 9/11 to get our attention markedly physically, and even at a physical distance and without actual knowledge of what had happened, because I did link my unsafeness to the 9/11 bombing. I guess I could have been wrong, but it's too much of a coincidence, the timing. So having located myself and settled the visceral response, and probably at the same time, we start counting, don't we, in these circumstances? How many planes, what time exactly did they hit the towers? And with each passing year, how many years ago was that? And what is the death count now? You know, I think there's something soothing about our system, for our system to count. And I believe it's to do with our endocrine system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic systems, they kick in to help us out of danger, basically, the sympathetic system, to help us out of danger or whatever. There's the fight, flight, and the one we forget rather often is the freeze, go limp, become immobile part of the suite of responses. And that's the sympathetic system. The sympathetic system is the calming, settling, feed and breed part of us. So we freeze, go leap, become immobile, because the first two responses to hyperarousal, which, you know, danger brings up, are interrupted or frustrated or not possible. And I've done quite a bit of study on trauma recently and how that whole thing works, and also ways to for people to help themselves and be helped to get through trauma. And I'm not talking about only the ones that get the publicity, like child abuse, rifle abuse, war, post-traumatic stress syndrome, etc. We all have at some point experienced trauma, and how we responded to it will condition whether we are long-term traumatized or not. So we teach counting the breaths, don't we? We count up to 10 and then return to count to 10 again, slowly. But not too slowly, obviously. Our logical brain is engaged, it's counting, and our emotional department works as a team. The logical brain and the emotional brain, the counting calms, the breathing calms. The sections of our brain cooperate rather wonderfully. As I like to say, we need the team, and it's working well. And then when it isn't, you'll know, because you're stuck in emotion or default to and focus on emotion, hurt, or trying to get yourself together with the prefrontal cortex. Both significant, important, and should not be derided in any way. So the team keeps us out of being eaten, or us eating something that ends up making us ill. Something in us is knows instinctively, and most of the time we manage to avoid contaminated food or contamination or contagion. Does that sound familiar? It's in my reading. It's talks about that in our system is a knowledge of how to respond to contagion, or contamination, which is, with our virus, obviously it's invisible, and contaminated food, it's invisible. But we have some wiring in there, I would say emotional wiring, that brings us into disgust, to dissociate and distance ourselves from potential contagion or contamination. It's called the behavioural immune system, incidentally, and I'll give you links to this. So we don't stop there. Then there is the blame. We go after those or that which hurt us, so it would not do it again to us or others. And we saw that so much. Instant response in America. We're going to eliminate I can't remember even the words, but revenge was high on the list. Not so sweet in the short or long term, as we have learnt to our cost in the last 20 years. Very much in the news at the moment. We are, as a consequence of an attack, and I'm using attack in a very wide way, we are infected by a feeling of dread, future dread, subconsciously. And some triggered by from time to time. And here's a little story from my own experience. As a child, and this is really sad for anybody who's dealing with children, I would wake up in the morning, every morning, and my first thought was, what have I got to dread today? I feel so sorry for that child now. Oh, it's 10 days before the next appointment. I can breathe easy. So there we have it, the counting and the soothing. Was it soothing to know that it was now at least 10 whole days away? Yes, it was soothing. We know how to help ourselves. Brain and emotions together. The dentist, Mr. Trott, invaded my face fairly regularly, my space, inflicted pain, put a mask over my face for extractions. Mr. Trott was the enemy. See, I remember his name even. I could do nothing about it except dread the day and worry. I've worried pretty much all my life and was afraid of the dentist. Although, with time and maturity, that's got a little better, and always ask for a dentist used to dealing with anxious people. On a scale, I probably wasn't that bad. Oh, yes. Anybody over about 45 will be afraid of the dentist. The lovely Nigel, the dentist I see at the moment, told me the other day. Oh, what a relief. Confirmed I was not the only one that was up the pole with dentistry. So on hearing Nigel say that, my rational brain was satisfied, and most importantly, my feelings acknowledged. How important is that? Okay, yeah, we can let go of that then. There we have it, the brain team working together. Now, in the dentist chair recently, I find myself, in quotes, letting go. I notice that my breathing can be released, and when it isn't, I consciously have the wherewithal to remember to release it. I'm letting go of the situation around me, and my gaze goes to the ceiling, plain wall, you might say. The noise of the equipment recedes, and the chatter of the assistant and the dentist, the lovely Nigel, recedes. And I stop looking out for the clock or mentally wondering, how much longer do I have to endure this dentistry? So returning to meditation again, when we sit and let the team settle down, at the very least stop shouting, we can enter other aspects of our functioning as humans, which is what we were born with, we inherited. And that's entering the more expansive, the large as the universe and as small as a grain of sand in quotes place. The team, our daily living team, don't go away. They are present. In the same physical location, physically we are present here and now. And we're located in time. Often people worry that if they lose the ability to think and to revisit past pain or present pain, that they will somehow be unsafe. And so it's very important to be feeling safe when you sit in a safe place, in a good, clean environment, so that one can settle oneself. And it's not always that easy, because some people have got their sympathetic nervous system switched on pretty much permanently on high alert. So again, or very strongly on alert. So that has to be looked and sat with compassion, like me and the dentist. Acknowledging the fears and the feelings is a big part of coming to accept, and maybe to find ways to set something to rest. So whilst we sit, our senses are open, but not grabbing stuff, as we know. And isn't it interesting how we know when our half-hour sitting period or whatever has come to an end without actually watching the clock? We check the clock, and sure enough, for the most part, time is up. I was going to enable this talk that we know, but that we don't know. That's that we know, but that we don't know that we know. There's something clicking in underneath all of this that knows to not go towards that contaminated food or go into that place, because it may be the very place that you would catch COVID. Or, I'm using a topical thing, but that vigilance really goes hyperdrive, and as we know, we could become paranoid and overreactive to circumstances, and it's rather difficult to switch off when the danger has gone. So the time is up, onwards to the next thing. What's good to do next, as Reverend Saido was talking about yesterday. Get on and do the next thing, and just respond to the calls from the environment and the inner environment too, best one can. Not being ahead of ourselves is a really important one. And that's our life, really. Or is it? Anyway, onwards and upwards, as we say. I was particularly struck by what Reverend Saido said about the story of the Buddha, of the monks not going to attend on the person who was dying, I think, got diarrhea, And I thought, was that an uncompassionate thing, or was that to do with that knowing that it's to protect oneself and others from contamination, to isolate those that are potential sources of contamination, and that the wonderful teaching of the Buddha that says there's something deeper here going on, and there's something deeper that is in operation in our lives, is empathy and sympathy and compassion and love and all those things that trump all that I've been talking about, while still being hugely influenced. Knowing all these things has really helped me to have compassion for myself and for others, and a dollop of understanding, which helps, about the way I react and behave, influenced by things that I may not even know about consciously, that colour doing the next thing, or the way the next thing is performed. But there's something more. There's something else at function. The brain team is not complete quite yet. I'm sitting here in room 2 in the Hall of Pure Offerings. Many of you have been here, you know it. And I have been recalling the many times I've sat and listened and counselled a woman, now deceased. She almost always was assigned this room, to the point where people called it Brenda's room. Brenda Birchenough. I began to realise that at an early age she had been traumatised, and I think I only knew how traumatised she'd been on the day that we performed her cremation. I'll not go into that. That's not needing to be itemised. Our conversations would almost always centre around death and dying. So obviously there was some traumatising around death and dying from a very early age. She tried her darndest to rationalise her, let's say, obsession. But there was a reason for her returning again and again and again. But the subject and the impact it had on her, I would say 24/7, did not diminish with time. It didn't go away. Probably our last conversation could have included, death and dying. We were sitting together. She was dying, although she wasn't speaking at the time. After we'd gone some lengthy discussion on the subject, we'd go into sometimes, and most often, what I thought of as a hiatus. And it would sort of start like, I shouldn't know this because I'm such a bad trainee and I haven't got over this, and this has been, by now you'd think with all these years of meditate, hiatus. I'm so far behind with my training. And incidentally, she started sitting well before ever I did. I met her on my first second introductory retreat. She did her best when she could to have the courage to be with herself and to sit, and she'd come up here for long lengths of time. And then she'd go, the thing is, and then she would deliver an insight, which sometimes would just kind of knock me off my seat. There would be, visionary understandings about compassion and love. But anyway, who's counting? But one I do particularly remember, and it was in this room that she said it. You know, Mugō, we are permeable beings, aren't we? And I said, Brenda, do write that down and let's put it on the altar, the very altar that's behind me, so that when life gets hard, you can remember that you knew that. And with that, thank you for listening. And remember Brenda's insight into the way things are. We are permeable. We are actually feeling people who think, not the other way around. And to acknowledge and connect with the feeling part of us, not to obsess, but simply to notice the feelings that accompany the thoughts, that accompany the actions, will see how permeable we are and how we can respond in ways that you didn't even think possible, because there's something in us that knows something that we don't know. Thank you very much. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha.